It started like a fun idea. Busloads of Eritrean nationals were headed to a cultural festival in central Germany. They sold flags, t-shirts, listened to music and danced. But outside, an angry mob was gathering. Shortly thereafter, it turned into rioting. 1,000 officers were deployed and 22 were injured. And this was part of a larger plan. The next month, another festival in Stockholm took a violent turn when 1,000 Eritrean protesters stormed the event. Over 50 people were injured. Only a few days later, similar rioting occurred in Canada in 3 different cities.
The largest violent event in recent memory.
But arguably the worst riots were in Tel Aviv. This escalation isn't sporadic or a coincidence. It is organized, and it's bringing Eritrea's domestic problems to Europe and North America. And in February, it escalated again, this time in the Netherlands. This is what's happening at these festivals and why it continuously escalates with hindsight. I'm really excited to share this week's video. It's one of those stories where you can understand the perspective of both sides, but where in the meantime, both of them are also in the wrong. And as a storyteller, that's a lot of fun to work with. I also quickly want to announce that as this video is being published, I'll be on holiday. So 2 weeks ago, I was visiting my family in the Netherlands, and right now I'm in Mexico visiting the family of my wife. That means that for the next 2 to probably 3 weeks, I'm not going to be uploading a video, but I'm working on a ton of cool new ideas. So I'll probably be working next on a video about Canada, maybe something about the housing crisis or immigration. I'm still looking for the angle. And I'm also considering doing something about Switzerland or maybe also about Mexico. So if you're a regular viewer and you want to support the work that I'm doing here, check out my Patreon page. I'll put up a link in the description and in the pinned comment. So now, let's delve into some of that backstory. Eritrea is often nicknamed the North Korea of Africa. It ranks near the bottom of all lists. It's one of the least developed and poorest countries in the world. It is one of the highest numbers of jailed reporters. And it's the only country in Africa without any form of private media. Most people don't have a phone or have internet access. And no political parties are allowed besides the party of this man, Isaias Afwerki. He's now widely considered to be a dictator, but he started his career full of promise. In the early 1990s, Eritrea had been at war for 30 years to fight for independence from Ethiopia, and Isaias worked up the ranks to lead the pro-independence forces. Upon their victory, he was celebrated as a hero. He obtained support from the United States and cooperated closely with the Chinese. He was widely popular and promised to hold elections at the end of his term, but that never happened. He consolidated power, imprisoned his opponents, and he kept the country at a constant state of war preparedness. All citizens must serve in the military. The mandatory term is 18 months, but this is often extended to several years and in some cases to over a decade. About a third of all Eritreans fled this brutal regime in the last 3 decades. Most stay in East Africa, but many also make their way to Europe and beyond. Today, hundreds of thousands of Eritreans are living in rich Western countries, and these people keep Eritrea afloat. The government collects a 2% income tax from people who live abroad, and if they don't pay, they can be denied consular services like issuing a passport. The government also occasionally crowdfunds when it's in need of cash. Like during COVID, when they demanded a minimum donation of €100 and they published weekly updates with the amounts that were raised. These remittances, taxes, and donations account for about a third of Eritrea's GDP, and they are using these cultural festivals to get a little more. Supporters of these festivals argue that it's a chance for immigrants to celebrate their culture and history. And they argue that they are nothing political. But the Eritrean government makes money selling merchandise. They also occasionally sponsor people to speak at these events and to spread views that favor the current government. This has been a sore spot for many people who fled the regime.
Die sollen nicht hier feiern, die sollen nicht hier Geld sammeln und die zum den Diktator.
Dann hier zu feiern und zu tanzen und Gelder etc. in Eritrea. Ich habe keine Worte praktisch dafür.
They managed to escape this country, only to be harassed, intimidated and extorted somewhere else. And they see fellow countrymen who are celebrating and in their eyes are supporting the dictator. But they see it differently.
Das ist keine politische Veranstaltung. Das ist ein Treff wie jede andere Nation. Wir feiern, wir dürfen auch das machen.
Essen und das ist Musik, das ist nicht politisch.
On July 8th, 2023, a festival was taking place in Gießen, Germany, and this was going to be different. The mob of protesters that was gathering outside was part of the newly formed Brigade Namedu, which was formed with the explicit goal to force a worldwide shutdown of these festivals. The next month, this was repeated in Sweden. This is how they work. They riot with the police so that the festival is cancelled, or even better, that it won't receive permission next time, out of fear for escalation.
The violence broke out at the festival Eritrea Toronto.
A few days later, the same pattern was repeated in different cities across Canada.
A series of protests across Edmonton tonight, which have turned violent.
And then, in Tel Aviv. This was a turning point. Of all the government-sponsored festivals in 2022, 2 erupted in violence and 7 were cancelled out of fear for escalation. But in 2023, there was only 1 government-sponsored event that was free of violence. But that had to be cancelled halfway through. The Eritrean government needs these festivals. There have always been tensions with neighboring Ethiopia, and this had justified their militarization in the past. But recently, these tensions have veered towards the brink of war. They need money, now more than ever. And for that, they need to control their diaspora. After Tel Aviv, a pro-government group called Fourth Front was formed with the goal to defend these festivals. Pictures were shared on social media of Fourth Front members preparing to defend these festivals. And they showed up at an event in Denver, carrying their insignia and showing off their weapons. They called on social media for a peaceful demonstration in the Netherlands. And in February, a festival was held. About 500 Eritreans gathered in The Hague, while outside, protesters disrupted the scene and clashed with the police. The difficulty here is that many Eritreans attending these festivals truly do so with the intention to celebrate their heritage, to enjoy the atmosphere, the food, and the people.
It's a tradition and a culture of friendship, of patriotism, of people coming together.
We celebrate almost 30 years for this festival. This is the one we have to find our friends, to show our culture for our children. So very disappointed.
But it's also well documented that the Eritrean government makes money. At a single event in Dallas, Texas, they raised over $1 million for the Eritrean government. That money is then used to support one of the most corrupt countries in the world, in ways that can't be independently verified. It is also well documented that pro-government voices are given a stage. The hunger and poverty are blamed on sanctions from the West, and critique on the human rights is dismissed as politically motivated. People have the right to celebrate their culture, tradition, and heritage, but that is now being used to support an oppressive regime, while opposition groups use violence to shut them down. And the perceived threat of escalation has already led to several festivals being cancelled. The irony is that these protesters are now becoming the thing that they dread. They want democracy and freedom by denying it from others. This problem was long ignored by Western countries, but the scale of the extortion and harassment is now beginning to surface. And this opens up a new chapter. How do we deal with this issue? Do we outlaw cultural festivals? Do we deport bad agents? And if so, where to? Let me know in the comments how you would deal with this issue. And here are 2 more videos for you to consider for your next watch.